Thank you, Mark, and thank you, everybody, for coming. We appreciate this. I'm here joined by my CFO who's sitting in back. You can also see him if you don't see me, and that's Dan Ford. We're here, Dan and I are here for a couple different reasons. One is because we believe that this company is at an inflection point. Maybe the best way to illustrate that is that on October 1st of this year, 8 days ago, we opened at $5.12 a share. Today we opened at $6.52 a share, about 28% increase over the last 8 days. That's not an accident. It's not a fluke. It's not, thank God, through insider trading or other things that can happen. It is because this company has reached a very interesting and I think very important point in its life cycle. Mark spoke about our revenue gains. We have consistently grown. I'll talk just a little bit about the company. Let me see if I can get this to work. The company, when I got involved in it, was a company based in Tualatin, Oregon, doing about $19 million in revenue. It was a small electronics component company, and we had $41.5 million in debt. $19 million in revenue and $41.5 million in debt. So effectively, we were bankrupt, is what we were. That was back in 2008, and we had a plan. We were going to go out. We were going to raise a bunch of money in the equity markets, pay off all our debt, and be on about our business. We were going to do that in November of 2008. And then in September of 2008, some of you will remember, probably not pleasantly, Lehman Brothers collapsed and there were no equity markets to go to. I presented to my board at that time two alternatives. One is the smart move, let's file bankruptcy and move on with our lives. Or two, let Dan and I do what we thought we could do, and that is take this small business, restructure it, cut costs, work on getting rid of debt, and see what we could do. And in fact, Mark is right. We took the company from $19 million to $26 million to $37 million to $42 million to $60 to $76, and we'll probably approach $100 million in revenue this year. We took the balance sheet from $41.5 million in debt to today effectively no debt and about $10 million worth of free cash in the bank. In conjunction with that, we took the company from its really pretty humble beginnings in Tualatin, Oregon. We have now a manufacturing facility that we acquired this year in Canada. We have a gas and oil division in Houston, Texas. We have a gas division in the UK. And we have a facility in Japan that services our Asian markets. So we have had a very strategic, very structured, very torturous, to be honest with you, several years of growth. And we are now at an inflection point. And I'll talk about that inflection point and why we think it's happening right now as we go through this. Originally, as I mentioned, we were a component electronics distribution company doing very, very much commodity sales, and we still have that. CUI is one of our business units. We have two. The first is CUI, and CUI is still based in Tualatin. It is a component, largely a component business that deals with 70,000 plus discrete customers and has 20,000 some odd SKUs. It's a very viable, very, very nice little business that has about a 6 to 8, maybe 10% growth rate year over year. In conjunction with that business, we were able to acquire a very differentiated technology in the gas and oil business, specifically a technology that was able to measure natural gas, the quality of natural gas in the pipeline. It was a quite interesting acquisition, and I'll talk about what it does and why it's so important. But initially, when we got it, I went around, actually personally, because I didn't want to burden the electronic sales group, I personally would go around the world to some of these bigger gas transmission companies with my engineering team that I had acquired when I got the technology, and we would show them the technology, and I'll talk about what it does and how it works in a second. But we would give it to them, they would look at it, it is a cylindrical device about the size of this cup. They would look at it, hear us, they would set it down, and their engineering team would always do the same thing. They would go, impossible. No, it's not impossible, it works. No, it's impossible. It can't do what you say it will do. So we would then come to tell them, listen, we'll give you one of these devices, you work with it, you use it, you test it, and when you're convinced, like we are, that it does what we say it will do, we'll come back and talk to you. And we did that. We did that with Kinder Morgan, we did that with Williams Pipeline, we did that with Snamretta in Italy, we did it with National Grid in the UK, some of the biggest players in the gas transmission industry in the world. And in each and every instance, we would come back, and whether it was 3 months or 4 months or 6 months, or in the case of Italy, 11 months, they would go, wow, unbelievable. This does exactly what you said it would do. Now tell me, what is it that the CUI does in the gas industry again? Well, we did nothing in the gas industry, and that was a problem Because without having a presence in the gas industry, these big companies didn't want to deal with us. They didn't care if we had the best technology in the world. If we weren't gas people with gas engineers, 24-hour call lines, the ability to service them the way they expected to be serviced, they weren't interested. What we had to do is acquire a gas, literally a gas presence. And we did that. In 2013, we ended up buying Orbital Gas Systems, which is a small company in the UK. Actually, it was the largest gas integration company in the UK. And that gave us the presence in the gas industry that we needed. And as a result, over the last 2 years, we've seen a much bigger uptake of our technology. That uptake is beginning to show results, which is what the key to this little tour that Dan and I are doing. We're starting to see those results in the form of revenues and earnings, and we think over the next few years, this is going to be a tremendous growth opportunity for a whole lot of people. What is the technology? Let's talk a little bit about it. In the gas industry today, what you have is, in essence, a standard that measures quality in the gas line that has been in place for 60 years. It's the same technology that was used 60 years ago to measure what's in that pipeline. It's been the same for 60 years because there's been no replacement. It's expensive, it's high maintenance, it's not very accurate, but it's the only thing the industry has had for 60 years. If you look at it, this is a good illustration of it. What you have is literally here a metering station in the UK, one that we at Orbital actually built. If you look at this metering station, it has several components to it, but I want to point out that it's a $250,000 installation that takes 6 weeks to do. Our technology, in quite simple terms, allows us to replace all of that with this box. $55,000 installed by 2 individuals in 90 minutes and operates without any ancillary maintenance whatsoever for in excess of 10 years. How does it work and what does it do? Well, here, let's move on, if I can move on. If you look at that, the device on the left, which is the old material, the old way that this analysis was done, what you have is several components. You have a sample probe that actually comes out of that 48-inch pipeline. That sample probe is drawing gas out at very high pressure, and using a high-pressure sample line, it's passing it to that gas conditioning box that you see there in the center. That gas conditioning box is lowering the pressure. It takes about 10 minutes. It's heating the gas up so that you don't have liquids dropping out, and it's putting it in a position where it can be used by the old technology, which is a gas chromatograph. It then transmits the gas through a low-pressure sample line that has to be laid to a gas chromatograph that is located in that kiosk. In fact, it's a little circle you see at this, roughly the center of the kiosk. That device uses carrier gas and calibration gas. It's very sensitive, needs to be calibrated 3 times a week by a chemical engineer, and it takes about 20 minutes to analyze the gas. So the reason it's not very accurate is you're talking about a 30-minute cycle time for gas that's traveling 60 miles an hour in that pipeline, which means the gas that you're actually measuring is 30 miles down the pipeline when you measure it. In the contrary, the flow meter that actually is measuring the flow of gas is telling you how much gas is flowing through that every single second of every minute of every hour. Our device replaces all of those things with that box. Inside that box, which we'll show you in just a second, is our device, which is the technology that we originally acquired, coupled to a device we acquired when we acquired Orbital, that allows us to measure the gas not only very quickly, in less than 10 seconds, but very, very accurately, just as accurate as a gas chromatograph. How does it work? Without getting too technical, what we acquired when we acquired the technology is what you see in the center there. Those 2 cylinders that you see in the center there measure 3 elements of the gas. CO2, so we have the inerts, speed of sound across a very discrete sample of the gas, and the thermal conductivity of the gas. Our device replaces the gas chromatograph, the circle that you see in the far right of that left-hand picture. The problem we had when we originally introduced it to the market is we had a 3-second cycle time, but we were still waiting to have the gas condition up to 10 minutes. So we had a 10-minute, 3-second device. As a pure coincidence, Orbital, the company we acquired at about the same time, had invented and was marketing this probe you see on the left. That probe was originally invented to prevent vibration in the pipe. In fact, those ailerons that you see going around the side of the pipe deflect and set forth a situation where vortexes that develop are eliminated, so that probe means there are no vibrations. As an unintended consequence of that, that sampling system was able to take samples from inside the pipeline and give it to an analyzer in less than 2 seconds. So they had a 2-second sampling system going to a 20-minute analyzer. We had a 3-second analyzer taking from a 10-minute sampling system. That is a marriage made in heaven. And that's what we did. We put the two together, and what you see on the far right is the gas PTI device, the integrated device that has our devices sitting inside it with a little bit of gas conditioning equipment inside there, sitting on top of that probe, which fits in that pipeline, allowing us to do the entire process from beginning to end in less than 10 seconds. It was an incredible change in the way monitoring could be done in pipeline systems. It's revolutionary, to be frank with you. And over the last 4 to 5 years, we have had it in place in a number of very large gas transmission companies and large gas equipment operators, which we'll talk about in a second. The market itself potentially is quite big. Let's real quick just talk about this probe. Because the way the probe actually works is because it prevents this vibration, we were able to make a aerodynamic tip. If you see on the right-hand side there, that's the way standard probes work. The gas is flowing this way, away from me. There's a cambered edge, and you have a pressure drop on the other side of that cambered edge, which draws all the dirt, gas, and everything else up into that very large opening in that probe. Because of that, there's a large filtration system, which allows the gas to take a lot of time to get to the analyzer. Our device has a 4-millimeter tube that runs up the center of it and allows sampling to be done very, very quickly. The key to that, though, is there's a large market for this. If you look at pipelines in the U.S., for example, there's about 305,000 miles of pipeline currently in the U.S., 210 operators, with about 140,000 miles of new pipeline being constructed right now. It's a $600 million opportunity looking at us right now for just the pipeline that's out there in the U.S. In the European pipeline system, about 220 miles of pipeline, about 60 to 80,000 pipeline under construction, about a $400 million opportunity. So again, a lot of opportunity for a lot of metering stations. The other market that we've been attacking quite successfully is the gas turbine and large equipment operators, including big two-stroke compressor engines. If you can think about it this way, these gas turbines create and use a huge amount of gas when they operate. The ones that we were testing on with GE, for example, are using as much as 10 pounds of natural gas a second, 5,000 cubic meters an hour. For us to be able to put a device on there that gives them real-time data about the gas quality, they can actually adjust fuel-air ratio. They can adjust things like timing and ignition temperature. And they've seen results of as much as 10% reduction in fuel use, which is very dramatic. And even more important to them is a 40% reduction in emissions out the back end of those machines. So again, that's what we're able to give them, which cannot be done with a gas chromatograph. Because as we talked about it, gas chromatograph is always going to give data that's minutes old, not seconds old. And because of that, these big, huge machines are never able to operate in such a way that they can be truly efficient. So again, those two markets are the big markets that we're in. Over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, we've had, I will tell you right now, incredible, very frustrating difficulties getting into those markets. Not because our technology doesn't work, it does work. But me, being naive, and with my background, I hadn't introduced new product in the market before. I felt we had this great new technology. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's more accurate, it's less maintenance. I thought people would be beating a path to my door. Well, guess what? I was wrong. Not only were they not beating a path to our door, most of them were holding the door shut. Because even though the gas chromatograph is old, and it doesn't work very well, and it requires a lot of maintenance, guess what? It's the same thing they've used for 60 years. And when you walk into an office with somebody who's used something for 60 years and tell them they're going to change it, the answer I often got was, let me tell you something, I like what you're telling me, but no one's ever been fired for buying a gas chromatograph. And that's exactly what you would face. And we faced it over and over again. Well, I'm telling you that the reason this inflection point has occurred is we have overcome that argument finally. The way we did that is quite simply, we had this beautifully operating little electronics company that was paying the bills, while we could take the time to introduce these products into market and to literally allow these big companies to do not months, but in some cases years of testing. That's been done now. And I can tell you what you're seeing with the revenue increase over the last few months and what you're going to see in the revenue increases over the next several months is big companies that are now buying these technologies. And they're buying them, and as they buy them, they are seeing that they work, and as they work, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The key to this is right simple. I've been told this by many people who are very much more experienced in the gas industry than I am. The gas industry, much like I think many industries, are literally schools of fish. And they all move in the same direction at the same time wherever they happen to go. Once you are able to change one or two of those key fish and move them in a different direction, the entire school very quickly follows. I've been told by many in the gas industry that once people really understand what this technology does, once they really understand how quick, how fast, how efficient, how cheap, how low maintenance it is, it will become the state of the art in measurement of gas within the pipeline. And that's exactly what I think is happening. We've looked at, for example, projects where we were asked to go down to Australia for a very large gas and oil company down in Australia that is in the process of building a $36 billion LNG plant. It's being funded by China, South Korea, India, and the Australian government. It's a huge project, and we were invited down there earlier this year to put together a 460,000 pound order for our detection device based on our sampling system. So about $600,000. To date, we've delivered over $5 million in product to that one project. We've been told that we will see between 15 and 20 million pounds in business over the course of the next 2 years with that one project, because they've seen what we can do and they are so impressed with what we're able to do that literally no one else can do. We're seeing that same company now start to develop uses for the technology in North America, and we're just about to drop our first purchase order in North America for use there. And again, it's a time when this company is starting to see development that we had never seen before. We're starting to get calls from companies that we never got before. And I think maybe the biggest thing that's happening right now, and I can talk about this briefly, is we have had for many, many years now, 5 years actually almost, a project in place with Snam Gas, which is the Italian gas pipeline company. They are originally, were approached by us and originally thought that they would deploy 300 of our devices. Their plan was to do that over the course of several years. They were going to deploy 300. And in order to do that, they needed to do a substantial amount of testing. The first testing was 1 year of lab testing, which they did. The second test was 2 years of field testing with 6 of our units, which they did. Then they had to take those 6 units and have them tested by the University of Milan independently for a 6-month period of time, which they did. Now, the distressing part of that is it took almost 4 years to get all the testing done. The very positive part of it is that their project that was for 300 units was just made public September 3rd of this year, when an RFQ went out for 3,000 units at a value of 154 million euros. We are now one of only 2 companies being considered for those 3,000 units. We're in the process of bidding that project right now, and we frankly expect to get some or all of that project, which is scheduled to begin the first quarter of next year. So again, when I tell you this is an inflection point for this company, it is an inflection point for this company. That's why Dan and I have decided to make this tour, not just here, but to several different conferences and to several road shows that we're putting together right now, because we want people to see what's happening. I'm not asking you to invest in my stock. I'm not asking you to give me money. I'm not asking you to do anything other than this. Put my ticker on your computer. Watch my press releases over the next few weeks. Look at my earnings when I do my earnings report in November, and then make your own decision. This is a company that I and Dan are very, very proud of. We've worked incredibly hard to get where we are today. As some of you can probably imagine, getting rid of $41 million in debt is quite an operation, especially during 4 years of probably the worst growth in the U.S. economy that we've ever seen. It entailed everything but one thing. We didn't default on a single note. We paid them off, we renegotiated them, we converted them to equity, we did any number of things, but we got rid of all that debt. And we're able to uplist to the NASDAQ and literally, like I say, set up a balance sheet now that has almost $10 million free cash in the bank. And in the meantime, have been able to develop these technologies. The only other technology I'll talk to you about briefly is we had an announcement today, actually this morning, if any of you noticed or followed the stock. We had an announcement today about our Iris technology. We've been selected as in a conceptual design to do an Iris plan that will allow National Grid to monitor and control remote locations that have no power. So we can operate our system on either wind power or solar power. But in order just to give you some idea of what this company has going forward, we'll talk just a little bit about Iris. Iris is a quite proprietary system that we devised under a £1 million or $1 million rather, 600,000 pound grant from National Grid, the national pipeline transmission company in the UK. At the time that we started Iris, National Grid, this happens to be National Grid's control center in London, any pipeline company, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's water, gas, air, it doesn't matter what you're pumping through a pipeline, somewhere there's a control room like this for that pipeline system. What it has is all of the pump stations, all the metering stations, all the valves, everything is set up on that board, and sitting somewhere is that guy watching that board. At some point during his career, ultimately, an alarm bell is going to go off and a red light is going to occur at one of those installations. The key to that is this, and if you know this, if you know anything about monitoring like this, the reason 3 Mile Island was such a disaster is because there was no filtering on the alarm system. So what happened is, at 3 Mile Island, there was a cascade of alarms that lit up the whole board red, and they had no idea what to do because they now had alarms on every station. So it's a very strong psychology of how those alarms go off. And at the 50,000 foot level, if you will, he'll get an alarm at that system. And what he does today, or what he did back then in National Grid, is he would pick up the phone, he would dial a number of a technician who was close to that pump station, wherever the default was, and he would tell that guy, get in your car, I got a problem at pump station 40, drive out there at 1 and 2 in the morning or 1 and 2 in the afternoon and find out what's going on. When that guy got out there, what he would do is this. He would punch in his code into a panel just like that, and almost a DOS-style or text-style system would come up with a message. You have a faulty valve at valve 17. He would take his toolkit, he would walk to valve 17, he would take that valve apart, he would hope that he had the replacement parts, and hopefully he would fix the valve and put it back online. That was not working for National Grid. They came to us and said, we need you to put something together that's much more dynamic, that we own, that we can work with, that allows our technicians to work remotely much more enthusiastically. Here's what we put together for them. Now, today at National Grid, when they have a problem at a pump station or a metering station, that guy calls that same individual, but now he can go on his smartphone, he can go on his iPad, he can go on his computer, he can put in a password, and he can pull up this web-based diagram of that very pump station. He can look at it and say to himself, okay, right down there, pump 17 is that black pump down there with the S on it in the lower right-hand corner. There's a problem. Let me just see what that problem is. He can touch it, and he gets a pop-up menu. That menu allows him to close that pump or open that pump. But more importantly, he can push that configure tab up there, and it will give him a drop-down diagnostic of what's wrong with that valve. So he can figure out what needs to be done to fix it and how he needs to fix it. Most importantly, that night he can go, all right, that pump 17, or rather that valve 17 is the faulty valve. I'll shut down 16 in the lower right-hand corner. I'll shut down 14, the one above it. I'll open up 13, and I'll open up 12. I bypassed that valve. I have no problem tonight, and I can call that guy back and say, I don't need to go out there tonight. I'll go out in the morning when I can fix it, when I have the part, when I know everything's ready. National Grid, as a result of adoption of this in 70 of their 390 pump locations, has reduced their called-out services, extra-hour called-out services, by almost 60%. 60% of the time, they no longer have to go out because their technicians can make whatever they have to do remotely using this technology. It is a very exciting technology, needless to say, and it's one that we will be taking out to market in North America with GE as our partner. The reason GE is our partner is because the hardware that we use is a GE PAC 8000. We approached GE about partnering with them on this. They made us one of their PSP members. They're Premier Solution Partners. We're on their website, and we intend to take this out. The market here is even larger than the gas PT market. The devices sell, the kiosks sell for about 100,000 pounds a piece, or $160,000. In the UK, as I mentioned, we've installed 70 of them, 70. We expect the contract to come out for the other 320 in the next several months. Our press release this morning indicated that National Grid has ordered another 10 kiosks from us in preparation for that. But to give you some idea of the market, GE did a market study for us on Kinder Morgan, understanding that National Grid is a very small pipeline company. The UK is an island, so it's very small. National Grid, as I mentioned to you, needs 390 total kiosks. We've already delivered 70 to them. If you take that same model and put it on one company in the US, Kinder Morgan wouldn't need 390. They'd need almost 4,200 separate kiosks, over 400 million pounds, over $600 million in retrofitting. So again, when you think about it, this is an opportunity that we see in the future. So this is a company that we feel is again, poised for growth. We've seen growth in the past, but I think we're poised for much greater growth, and that's why we came, and that's why we're here. With that being said, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Any questions? Anything I can tell or answer to you guys? Well, I'll go. Since you're the host, I'll go right back to you, Mark.
Explain to me some of the difference in gross margins between your different products.
Sure. If you look at the traditional electronics business, we've been able to hold about 37, 38% gross margins across the board. We've done that through, really efforts for Dan and his team. We really don't take business that's less than that. That electronics division gets about 10 to 12% net to sales, so about 10 to 12% operating margins. Unlike our last presenter, we have $28 million in carry forward tax losses. That's what you get when you don't get what you want, right? We have lots of tax benefits, so that's something we don't really worry about at this point. We will, I think, in the next few years, but again, haven't. So that's that margin. If you look at the new technologies in gas, we're looking at margins that are better than 60% gross margins and something approaching 40 to 45% net margins. Reason for that is it's not commoditized.
And really, how do you describe what you do on that side of the business? I mean,
On the gas side.
Yeah, on the gas side.
Yeah.
You got a monitor, a test and measurement
Right.
device, and then you have kind of a monitoring device, and they both do monitorings. But I mean, what is it that you do so I can have a better understanding as to what the next thing might be?
The underlying business that we have in both the US and in Europe is a gas integration business. And here's what we do. We take components, whether it be gas chromatographs, the gas PT, probes. We put all of those things together into operational skids for the industry. So if they want, for example, a metering station to put out, these things are made in trailers. If you can think of a big double-wide trailer, we would put together a big double-wide trailer with all the accoutrements, what they need, and then we would deliver that to them. They would install it, that's what they do, but we would deliver them that integrated unit. One of our big areas right now, for example, is biomethane gas. In Europe, there's a directive from the European Union that all gas has to be come from renewable resources, so biomethane. 20% of it has to come from that by 2020. So there's a big push now in the UK and in Europe to put these biomethane terminals in. So what you have is a large producer of biomethane gas. It might be a landfill, it might be a farming consortium, it might be a brewery. It's any number of things that develop and produce biomethane gas. They need a way to get that biomethane gas treated, generally heated up, if you will, but treated and then plugged into the grid. To do that, you need a number of things. You need propane injection, you need nitrogen injection, you need measuring, you need a bunch of things. We make those connectors, if you will, in these big double-wide trailer setups. So we would put together our gas PT, Emerson GCs, gas chromatographs, probes, all the things that farmer or that big brewery operator, all the things they need to hook to the natural grid net, we put that together. We deliver it to them. They have a cement pad. We set it up. They hook their fuel source in one end, and we hook the grid in the other end. So that's what we do. We do, in essence, contract integration work. That work is much the same as the electronics division. That work is about, somewhere around 37, 38% gross margins, a little bit higher generally net margins, something in the 15 to 16%. But again, very stable, very solid, pays the bills, and it allows us obviously to develop and push this newer technology into the market. Other questions? Yeah, Craig.
You speak about the gas turbine manufacturers and the benefits about fine-tuning in real time, yet the device has been at GE by your own admission several years.
It has.
And has not resulted in much orders. This is unrelated to the gas chromatograph that it may be displacing. Can you comment on that?
Sure, it's just they're big companies and they move very slowly. These machines are huge machines that are generally valued from anywhere from $12 million to as much as $200 million a piece, the gas turbines, and they just don't move fast. We actually have gotten our first retail orders from GE, interestingly enough, and they're going to put 2 of our devices out in the Gulf of Mexico on a Pemex facility, but they move very slowly. We have 4 devices, redundant devices, out now being tested by MHI in Japan, but again, they just move very slowly. There's been no doubt. Everybody agrees the technology does exactly what we say it will do, but I think it's just a long adoption cycle. The key is we're getting to that adoption cycle, and that's why I think that you're seeing the inflection point. Other questions? Yeah.
The early orders for the gas PT.
Excuse me?
The recent orders you had for these gas PT devices, are these for pilot projects? Are these production types of orders? How would you classify them?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, these are not. We've done the pilot programs. We've done the testing. We've done all that. The orders we're getting now are actually operational orders that we're delivering and putting in the ground and are being used. That's the key to this, I think. It's not any longer, oh yeah, we'll look at it, we'll test it. We're not seeing that so much. In the turbine industry we are, because again, they're much slower to move. But in the field units that we're delivering, the units that we're delivering or will be delivering to Italy, the units that we're delivering to the UK, the units that we're delivering in North America, those are operational units that they are putting in place. All of the orders that we're sending to Gorgon, for example, we just delivered our first 3 units to Gorgon. They're in place, they're operating. They're actually mercury detection units that are already operating. So again, these are not test units or field trials or any of those things. These are actual operational units.
And is it your understanding once you get qualified for that particular aspect of gas metering, would these companies tend to come to you for future needs as well?
Well, we certainly hope that's the case. I can tell you this, it is what the biggest project that we're potentially involved in is the Italian project. And the reason for that is that the Italians have a very old infrastructure, and they're at the stage where they're actually going to change the entire infrastructure. But I can also tell you this, we've been literally contacted now, unilaterally, not us contacting them, but them contacting us, by each and every gas company, and each country has their own. Gas de France, Eon Gas in Germany, all the way up through Norsk into Norway, and Gas Unie into the Netherlands. We've been contacted independently by each one of them saying, we're watching what Italy's doing. If they do what they're going to do, we'd like to talk to you next. So again, these people are not, they see what's happening. And just to clarify what that opportunity is, currently in the generally across the European Union, the way gas is measured is this. You have zones within the network. So in the case of Italy, there are 7 zones. And in those zones, they use 200 gas chromatographs that measure, in essence, randomly in those zones. When they measure in those zones, the gas regulators tell them they can charge in that zone no more than what the lowest, most cool, if you will, or leanest gas that's delivered to that zone. So if they have a Russian gas that's coming in at 27, calorific value level of 27, and they have Iran and Iraq gas coming in at 38 or 39, it doesn't matter. If there's any Russian gas at 27 in that zone, they can only charge that amount. That's all they can charge, nothing more. The reason they're retrofitting with 3,000 metering units is because they don't want to do that anymore. And the regulator said, okay, if you don't want to do that, then measure what you're delivering, and you can charge what you're delivering. But you got to measure to each customer, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to measure to all the big customers, and it's a big change. But they think, they've done models on this, and they believe they can have a return on investment on the entire program in less than 24 months, in less than 2 years. They think that that's how much high-end gas they're giving away. So again, if it works well there, it's something that we think we're going to see a lot of growth throughout Europe. Yeah, in the back table.
So, I'm just.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay.
How much of your business is when you sell a unit is you sell the unit, you make your margin, or is there service contracts with it? Are there any disposable? I mean.
Not to us. To answer your question, the good news for the customer is it's service-free. The bad news for the investor is it's service-free. But here, let me give you a little story on it. The industry expects and wants a service contract. But here's what they want for that service contract. And here's a good example. I got a call from a very, very large pipeline operator in the Northeast, one of the largest in the world, actually. They came to us and they wanted one of our devices to be tested. And I was excited about it, couldn't wait to give them the device, obviously set everything up to go. Just before we would deliver it, the vice president I was talking to says, this is great, we love it. Just the one thing, who's your local rep? Local rep. Yeah, your local rep, who is it? Well, we don't have a local rep. Oh, man. Honestly, we would love to buy the device, but honestly, we'll buy it from a UK company, but you got to have a local rep. So I quickly said, well, if we were going to have a local rep, who would that be? Ives Corporation. Ives Equipment Corporation, they're the best in the Northeast. They'd be the ones. Well, it was not a coincidence that 6 weeks later we signed Ives as our rep. Okay, now they rep us with that customer. Terry Ives, who runs that company, looked at the device when I first took it to him, and he goes, that's amazing. It's great. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll definitely sell a lot of these. And then, wow. Yeah, we'll do a service contract as well. And I stopped and said, what? He goes, yeah, we'll sell a service contract. I go, a service contract? It doesn't require any service. He didn't pause. He looked right up and goes, perfect. Wait, you know what? He's right. For him, for the local distributors, which we have 42 of them, they will sell service contracts because the industry expects that. We won't get, for us, it is a one-time sale because it's big market, huge market, and growing exponentially, but that's something that local reps will do, and we don't have, we thought about that model, trying to actually create, a global presence. We don't have the wherewithal to do that.
Okay, follow-up. So you said one of your markets, it was like a $600 million market, one was, I think, $400 million a year.
Right.
Is that a year or?
No, the best way to figure that, here's the best way to calculate that. I'll give you a model you can do, okay? Right now, industry stats are very available on the gas chromatograph market in oil, or in gas, I'm sorry. The gas chromatograph market is very stable. It's been the same for almost 10 years, and that is in Europe and North America, there are about 4,000 gas chromatographs sold a year. Okay, that's what it is. Sometimes it's 3,900, sometimes it's 4,100, but generally speaking, it's around 4,000 units a year. It's been the same, steady, and that's what it is. It's the same this year, 4,000 units. Okay, that's what's sold. So that tells me that there's roughly 40,000 of those machines operating because they're supposed to operate a 10-year period, so they're probably replacing them by that. So if you look at that, that's 4,000 of these units. If we simply take, which we think we could take anywhere to 40 to 50% of that market, but let's just say we could take 30% of that market. 30% of that market. That's 1,200 units a year, year in, year out. The other calculation I'll give you that's real easy is every 100 of those gas PTIs that we sell works out to 10 cents after-tax profit per share. 110 cents. 1,200 units a year is $1.20 a share. That's what it is, after-tax profit. Pretty easy model to set up. And that's one market. That's the gas chromatograph market currently in the U.S. and Europe. Not Asia, doesn't include Asia, doesn't include any of the other parts of the world, South America, none of that. It includes just Europe and U.S., which is what we're targeting right now. And I think you had a question. It was actually, yeah.
When I just glanced at your financials, two things asked. Are you capitalizing development? What's the reason for the ongoing loss as you go through?
Dan, back there. Financial question. Go for it.
We've been expanding through SG&A mostly, so we built a sales force, including engineering teams to support the market. We've been testing the last several years, not doing revenue, so we opened up North America. There's been a team focused on the Italian opportunity. So it hasn't been R&D of product, it's been supporting the big opportunity that's only come yet. So
What was the one, the $4 million that you had two quarters ago?
in January, so or the first quarter this year, we opened up our Houston office, our American office, which was hiring about 15 people, including some retention recruitment bonuses and fees, and then just in general the startup cost of that, and it generated about $30,000 of revenue in the first quarter, so there was nothing to offset the cost. That division though is expected to be somewhere around $4 million this year in revenue. So the first quarter did about nothing. It's quickly recouping what it costs to start up. So.
The other thing I might mention is that first quarter, you might notice, we bought a company in Canada, a manufacturing operation called Tektrol. Again, we've been very, I think, good at making strategic and opportunistic acquisitions. This is one that we think is going to be very, very big for us in the next few years. It's a company that was doing, well, about 8 years ago, it was doing $80 million a year in revenue. Very profitable. Even 3 years ago, it was doing $40 million in revenue. And because of some, quite frankly, very poor management, it dropped into receivership late last year. We were able to buy it for almost nothing. In essence, about $1 million for the business and about $3 million for the inventory. And we think that that's going to be a very, very big addition to our electronics division. So again, but that was a close to $5 million cost as well. So there were some things that we're investing. The company, I will tell you right now, is built around growth right now. It's not profitability as much as it's growth. Now, as these bigger projects roll out next year, you're going to see profitability because, frankly, we're going to be making more money than even I can spend, and that's tough. Any other questions? Yeah, okay. Now you've used up almost your account, but go ahead.
Is there an opportunity to actually do your business in some way as a service with ongoing revenue or
Not at this stage. There are downstream. We feel there will, because once the big organizations start to incorporate the technology, we think that our next big market will be downstream users. So, for example, if we start putting these on every outlet, let's say to bring something more closer to home, on a PG&E or a Southern California Edison plant. Well, today that plant's not going to put in a gas chromatograph, hire a chemical engineer and start monitoring gas on their side. On the other hand, if they can buy a device for $50,000 that they can put on their side of the fence, and we can lease that to them even cheaper, and then we can sell them the information even cheaper, that will be for us a ongoing revenue stream. We think that'll be quite big for us in the future, but right now we're focusing on capturing the market. Okay? All right, guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.